Gajananam Bhutaganati Sevitam Kapitta Jambhupala Bhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinasha Karanam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Friends, Namaste and a hearty welcome to one and all. In the month of September, it being a very auspicious month, many events are there, festivals are there. Just to name a few, September 5th is the birth anniversary of our beloved Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, and the day is celebrated as Teachers' Day to remember and honor our teachers. On 8th September, Onam is celebrated. On 10th September is the starting day of Pitru Pakshas. On this day, we remember all our Pitrus. On this day or following days, we remember all our Pitrus, departed elders, with rituals and pay our obeisance to them. September 15th is the day a genius was born, Sir M. Vishveshwaraya. And this day is celebrated all over India as Engineers' Day. Navaratri starts from September 26th onwards. Each day has great significance. During these 9 nights and 10 days, the 9 forms of Devi or Shakti are worshipped. And on the 10th day is the famous Dasara celebration. September 29th is Vinayaka Chaturthi, the significance and story we all know. He brings in auspiciousness, dispelling obstacles. He provides Siddhi, divine powers, Buddhi, intellectual powers to attain Mukti, liberation. Now, coming to today's 23rd session of our series aimed to lead us into an inward journey for discovery of inner strength and happiness, in short, DISHA, through Bhagavad-Gita. As mentioned during our earlier sessions, DISHA is uniquely designed where our teachers shall explain one topic or concept from 2 texts, namely the Bhagavad-Gita and Tatwa Bodha. Today, Sri Venkatesh Prasad shall introduce us to the day's topics. Continuing Karma Sannyasa Yoga, 4th part, Dr. Meenal Kekatpure shall be explaining from the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, covering 2 topics. She will explain about Vairagyam, that is detachment, from verses 22 and 23, and Videha Mukti from verses 24 to 26. From the 2nd text, Tatwa Bodha, the topic is Atma and the 2 fundamental laws of Vedanta. After Dr. Meenal's presentation, Sri Venkatesh Prasad shall highlight important aspects of today's presentation. Today's teaching quiz shall be presented by Sri Venkatesh Prasad, who has put this together along with Srimati Chetana Hegde. Friends, a significant and popular shloka, a Subhashita, has been the signature tune of All India Radio. Dr. Sandhya Ravi shall commence today's session by chanting and explaining this very shloka. Dr. Sandhya Ravi, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This shloka is a well-known verse or a Subhashita from the Niti Shataka of Bhartrihari, who was a great philosopher poet of the 6th century. Bhartrihari was also the king of Ujjain and the stepbrother of the well-known Vikramaditya. His life presents to us a living account of a person's transformation from a pleasure-loving king to an ascetic. The immortal Subhashita Trishati, consisting of the trilogy of Niti Shataka, Shringara Shatakam and Vairagya Shatakam, reflect his life's experience as a king, a lover, and an ascetic. So today's shloka is from the Niti Shataka. Chanting it. Keyuranahu vibhushayanti purusham harana chandrojvala na snanam na vilepanam na kusumam na lankrita murdhaja vanyeka samalankaroti purusham ya samskrita dharyate Kshiyante kalu bhushanani sapatam vagbhushanam bhushanam. Let us look at the meaning of this verse. Next slide, please. It is not the bracelets, the keyura, that a person is adorned with. It's not the necklaces, the hara, which are as shiny as the moon, Chandra. It is not a bath, snanam, nor the smearing or anointing, that is vilepanam, one receives. It is not the flowers which smell fragrant, the kusuma, or the decorated hair, murdhaja, which embellish a person. These pale into insignificance, and they are indeed destroyed, kshiyanti, over a period of time. However, a person's soft, well-cultured, refined speech, vani or rak, is greatly upheld by everybody, which is the greatest adornment for a person. So some points, please stay on the previous slide, some points for introspection. Physical embellishment or adornment of ourselves is of no use to improve our personality if one's speech is not consoling or soothing, but is hurting and causes grief or agitation to others. As we all know, physical embellishments are only temporary. They're not long-lasting. They fade away over time. True decoration then is in the mind that is steeped in good values and virtues like love, sympathy, compassion, sacrifice. And the expression of these virtues is in the speech, which brings peace and joy to the listeners. This is the true jewel that one must aspire for. The importance of Vakbhushanam, next slide please, is greatly emphasized in our scriptures. Cultured speech paves the way for greater things. How else would the words of Adi Shankara, Ramanuja, Vedanta Desika, Vivekananda, and several others been immortalized? Swami Paramarthananda Ji, in his recent discourse on the Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, chapter 17 of the Bhagavad-Gita, mentioned this particular shloka in connection with verse 15. Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priya hitam. So, Vak Indriyam is a very powerful tool which we must use to cultivate our sattvic gunas. And we have a great responsibility when we speak to ensure that our words are truthful, do not cause distress or offend anyone. And remembering this particular shloka and chanting it daily will help us remember the impermanence of external embellishments and the importance of actively cultivating culturally refined speech. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya, for a beautiful explanation of a wonderful shloka from Niti Shataka composed by Bhartrihari. As Mr. Shivkumar mentioned, most of us here may recollect that All India Radio Bangalore was airing this shloka every morning before commencement of Sanskrit programs. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Our quest for discovery of inner strength and happiness through Bhagavad-Gita has brought us to edition 23, covering 5 chapters. Thank you, viewers, for your overwhelming response to DISHA. As we come close to the end of chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, it's appropriate to just recollect the topics we learned in this chapter and to see what we are going to learn today. Chapter 5, though is a small one consisting of 29 verses, is the summary of entire Bhagavad-Gita and, for that matter, entire Vedanta. Chapter 5 comprises of 4 topics: Nishtadvayas, the 2 lifestyles, Grihasthashrama and Sannyasashrama. sadhanadvayas, the two disciplines, karma yoga and jnana yoga. Jnana palam, including the jnana sadhana, vairagyam. Introduction to meditation as a foundation to chapter 6. In today's class, we are trying to understand the third topic of jnana palam. Verse 22 and 23 will deal with the spiritual value that is of vairagya. Vairagya means understanding the limitations of depending on external factors. We cannot avoid our physical dependence for our food, clothing, shelter, and a few other needs. But psychological dependence is samsara. This can and should be avoided. Swami Paramarthananda says, Sarvam paravasham dukkham, sarvam atmavasham sukham. Depending on external factors is dukkha, and depending on one's own self is sukham. Swami Dayananda says, you are the problem, you are the solution. What is the problem? Depending on outside unpredictable factors is the problem. What is the correction or the solution? Go from dependence to independence. For your shanti, for your tripti, for your purnatvam, for your security, and for everything. Verses 24 to 26 handle Danapalam in the form of Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Verse 24 says, such a Gnani who has mastered Vairagya, who revels within, will be a Brahma Bhuta, Jivan Mukta, while living, and will attain Brahma Nirvanam, Videha Mukti after death. Verse 25 and 26 explain different stages of Gnani will go through before attaining Brahma Nirvana. The last topic about meditation will be taken up for study in our next session, and with that we'll be completing study of 5th chapter. Today's class also includes study of Atma and the two fundamental principles of Vedanta in Tatwa Bodha as explained by Swami Paramarthananda. I've just given the glimpse of the subject matter of what we are going to study, and you will get all the details when the speaker takes it up for discussion. To help us understand these topics, today we have with us a sincere, serious spiritual seeker, Dr. Meenal Kekatpure. Dr. Meenal is a senior consultant in pediatric neurology at Narayana Hrudayalaya. I now invite her to begin her presentation. Dr. Meenal, please.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Venkatesh sir. We shall start today with the Tatwa Bodha topics first. So Tatwa Bodha states, Atma kaha sthula sukshma karana sharirad vyatiriktah panchakoshatitah san avasthatraya sakshi Satchidananda Swarupaha Sanyas Tishtati Sa Atma. Meaning, who am I, the self or Atma, the one who is distinct from the gross, subtle, and the causal bodies, being beyond the 5 sheets, who abides as a witness to the 3 states of experience, of the form of existence, the consciousness, the completeness, or the fullness. That is the true I, Atma, and the true self. To understand this better, let us briefly brush up a few basics from the Tatwa Bodha. Next slide, please, sir. Vedanta divides our body and personality into several layers, starting from the grosser layer to the finer or the subtler layers. The first division is that of our body, which is divided into 3 layers called as the Shariratrayam. The gross body or the Sthula Shariram, the subtle body or the Sukshma Shariram, and the Karana Sharir or the causal body. This division is based on the raw materials called Panchabhutas, which include the earth, water, fire, air, and space. The gross body is made up of these Panchabhutas. The subtle body has Sukshma Panchabhutas or the subtle 5 elements, while the Karana Sharir is the dormant or the seed form. The second division is a personality-based division based on the 5 layers of personality called as the Panchakoshas, which include Annamaya Kosha belonging to the Sthula Sharir, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Vijnanamaya Kosha that belong to the Sukshma Sharir, and the Anandamaya Kosha, part of the Karana Sharir. The third classification is based on our experiences in life, which are broadly classified as Swapnavastha, Avasthatrayam, and include waking state or the Jagrut Avastha, dream state or the swapnavastha and shushupti or the dreamless sleep. In the jagrut state, we experience the world objectively. In the swapnavastha, we experience the world subjectively. While in shushupti state, we experience neither the external objective world nor the internal subjective world. They both remain dormant. So now we have 11 factors. So can we have the next slide, please? 3 bodies, that is the Sharira Trayam, Panchakoshas or the 5 personalities, and the Avastha Trayam or the 3 states of experience. We are continuously experiencing all of these. In fact, the whole Vishwa is nothing but these 11 components only. And all these 11 factors are anatma because they are anitya, they are ever changing as they are bound by time and space, and they also have a beginning and an end. The main principle of Tatwa Viveka, which is defined as discrimination of truth from untruth, that Atma Satyaha Tadanyat Sarvam Mithya. Atma alone is the truth and everything else is the untruth. According to Vedanta, the whole universe is a mixture of truth and untruth, that is Atma and Anatma respectively, and distinguishing them is a purely cognitive process. Here, Swami Paramarthanandaji gives an example of hand and light. If you hold out a hand in the light, what do you see? Just the hand or the light illuminating the hand? Actually, without the light, there would be no hand seen. What we are experiencing is both the hand and the light. Knowing which features belong to the hand and which to the light is a requisite cognitive process. In the same way, one must have the Tatva Viveka to know the features of Anatma and Atma. Till now, we saw what Atma is not. It is not any of these 11 Anatmas that we just discussed. Now we will see what is the nature of Atma. Atma has a threefold nature defined as Sat, Chit and Anandaha. So 11 terms for Anatma and only 3 terms for the Atma. Since Atma exists in all 3 periods of time, the past, the present and the future, it is called as Sat, the absolute truth existing eternally. The word Chit means the consciousness principle or Chaitanya Swarupa, and Atma is Ananda Swarupa of the nature of pure bliss. Thus, Atma is Sat Chit Anandaha. The scriptures point out that all these 11 anatmas are made up of matter and energy only. Hence, they must be intrinsically, innately, and naturally jadam or achetanam, that is inert or insentient, because matter is not sentient by itself and matter also cannot produce sentiency. So what is that principle which makes the anatmic insentient and the inert body-mind-sense complex sentient? That principle is the Atma. To understand this, let us take an example of moonlight on a full moon day. The next slide, please, sir. We know that only the stars have intrinsic natural light, whereas the planets and their moons do not have an intrinsic natural light. It is borrowed from the sun. Therefore, the pleasant moonlight that I am experiencing is actually borrowed from the sun. Similarly, following the same logic, the body-mind-sense complex cannot have sentiency or consciousness of its own, but is borrowed from other source that is not from the body or of the body. But it is a non-material entity or a principle. Since if this principle was material, then it would also be insentient. This non-material principle is what the scriptures call as Atma, whose very nature is consciousness. Therefore, it is also called as Chaitanya Swarupa. So we get 5 learning points from this moonlight example. The first is the moonlight is not a part, product, or property of the moon. It is an independent principle which pervades and makes the moon bright. It is not limited by the boundary of the moon. The moonlight will continue even if the moon disappears. And when the moon is not there, even though the sunlight will continue, it will not be recognizable as moonlight for want of the reflecting medium that is the moon. And therefore, the light is unmanifest, but it is not absent. Now, if we apply the same analogy to the consciousness that enlivens the body-mind-sense complex, then we have the 5 features of Atma as are described by our Shastras. The next slide, please, sir. Consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body. It is an independent, non-material principle which pervades the material body and enlivens it. The consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body, and consciousness will continue to exist even when the borrowing material, that is the body, perishes. Consciousness will continue even after the body has perished, but consciousness minus the body-mind complex is an abstract principle which cannot be recognized, not because it is absent, but because the recognizable medium, that is the body, is not available. Now that we have this Tatwa Jnanam, we will see what are the benefits of having this Atma Jnanam or Tatwa Viveka. There are two benefits of Tatwa Viveka. The first one is called Jivan Mukti, that is freedom from expectation of permanence from the impermanent and materialistic world, which gives freedom from samsara and attachments, providing an instant moksha right here and now in this life. The second benefit is called as Videha Mukti, which comes for a jnani with self-knowledge at the time of death, giving freedom from the cycle of birth and death. One must remember that our body-mind-sense complex is very important, as it is the only medium we have for transacting with this world. So we must take good care of it, but we must not get unduly attached to it. The Atma is the subject, the experiencer, the true self, while the body-mind-sense complex is only the experienced object. This will come with practice and has to be thoroughly assimilated. For this very purpose, the scriptures prescribe meditation on Drigdrishya Viveka, the highlights of which form the fundamental principles of Vedanta, which we will see next. The next slide, sir. There are two fundamental principles of Vedanta. The first is that I am different from whatever I experience. The second is all the experienced attributes belong to the experienced objects and never to me, the experiencer. These two principles are the very foundation of Vedanta. If these two are clear, then the entire Vedanta is clear. I am different from whatever I experience because whatever I experience is an experienced object. I am not the experienced object. I am the experiencer. I am the subject. I am Drig, different from the experienced object. For example, I see a bird, but I am not the bird. I am standing on a carpet, but I am not the carpet. I'm using a computer, but I am different from the computer. The bird, carpet, and the computer are all experienceable objects. The flight of the bird, the feel of the carpet, or the content seen on the computer screen is an experience. And I am the experiencer who is separate and different from both the experience as well as the experienceable objects. This non-material consciousness principle, the experiencer alone, is my true nature. Therefore, instead of claiming the material body as myself, I have to gradually train myself to claim that I am the non-material spiritual principle who is experiencing this material body and lending consciousness to this body. Also, the experienced attributes that we saw in the examples earlier, that is the bird's flight, the feel, color, and the texture of the carpet, the computer, screen, and the content of the screen, these are all attributes of those respective objects. Although they are perceived by my eyes and my sense organs, they are different from me. These characteristics or attributes belong to the objects around me and not to me, the subject or the experiencer. Just as when I stand in front of the mirror, not only can I see the mirror, but my own reflection is also formed in the mirror. Similarly, although I experience the body, it is my own consciousness or the Atma which enlivens it. Thus, the training required for spiritual pursuit is that I am the experiencer Atma. Body, mind, sense complex is the experienced Anatma. I am the subject. Body, mind, sense complex is the object. So I am different from whatever I experience because whatever I experience is an experienced object. After practicing and assimilating these principles of Vedanta, we will realize that this physical body is also an intimately experienced, experienceable object. I experience every part of the body, more so when there is some pain and discomfort in any particular part of my body. Not only am I aware of this body, but I also use this body as a temporary medium and only in the waking state. A dream body is used in the dream state, and none of the bodies are used in Shushupti. Thus, body is only a temporary medium, and I am different from my body. Body is a part of objective world. It came from the Panchabhutas and will go back to the Panchabhutas after death. Therefore, a human body is very much an object, just like the rest of the world. The only difference is the world is a remote object, but my body is an intimate object. Swamiji gives an example of spectacles or eyeglasses here to make us understand this concept better. Eyeglasses or spectacles is an object. Flowers in the garden or the carpet below my feet are also objects. A spectacle is an intimate object. I wear it on my face, over my nose, very close to my eyes. In fact, I see the spectacles first, and through the spectacles, I see the flowers, carpet, and also rest of the world. Similarly, this physical body also I experience first as an intimate object, and through this body, I experience the world. Therefore, body is also an object. It is not the real I or the experiencer, the subject. This concept is very beautifully brought forth by Sri Shankaracharya ji in his composition Nirvana Shatakam, the first verse of which we will read. Manobuddhya hankara chittani naham na cha shrotra jivhe na cha ghrana netre na cha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayuhu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham, which means I am not the mind, nor the intelligence, nor ego. Neither am I the organ of hearing, nor of tasting, nor of smell, nor of sight. Neither am I the sky, nor earth, nor fire, nor air. I am the ever pure blissful consciousness. I am Shiva. I am Satchid Ananda Rupam. Elaborating further, each of the experienced attributes, be it color, form, different properties, including the location and time, belong to the experienced object and not to the experiencer. Thus, time and space location is also an attribute of each object that we perceive. So if the space and time location is an experienced attribute, then it should belong to the experienced object. And if it belongs to the experienced object, it does not belong to the experiencer, the subject, or the self. That means my true self does not have a time and space location. And it means that I am unconditioned by time and space. When I am not conditioned by time, I am called Sat, the eternal truth. When I am not conditioned by space, I am called Anantaha. So, Sadrupaha aham asmi, Kalatitaha aham asmi, Anantarupam aham asmi, Deshatitaha aham asmi. Also, my nature being pure bliss, I am Anandam, I am pure consciousness, the witness of everything. So, I am Chit. Therefore, Satchidananda Atma aham asmi. This is what the two fundamental principles of Vedanta mean. Now, with this background, let us discuss Vairagyam, which is evident in verse numbers 22 and 23, and Videha Mukti, which are discussed in verse numbers 24 to 26 of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, which is entitled Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Vairagyam is one of the 4 mandatory preparatory disciplines of Vedanta, which include discrimination, dispassion or Vairagyam, discipline and desire. These are the 4 Ds of Vedanta. Most Jivatmas are bound and attached to people and things around them, known as samsara. A true spiritual seeker must have a sincere desire to get out of this bondage by developing Vairagyam or dispassion, which is possible only through self-knowledge or jnanam. In the 22nd verse, Krishna says, O Arjuna, those pleasures which are born of contact are indeed sources of sorrow only, because they have a beginning and an end. A wise person does not revel in them. While in the 23rd verse, he says, that person who is able to manage the impulse born of desire and anger here itself, before the fall of the body, is disciplined. He is happy. Now, how do we get caught in this samsara? The next slide, please, sir. Sense objects called as Vishayaha are capable of giving us pleasure, fulfillment, or happiness, called as Bhogaha or Sukham, by coming into contact with our sense organs called Indriya. Shri Krishna calls all these pleasures that are born out of contact of sense objects with sense organs as Samsparshajaha Bhogaha. That is, pleasures or joys born out of contact or interaction. Therefore, all pleasures or bhogas are born out of indriya vishaya samsparshajaha. These bhogas give pleasure that is mixed with pain, just like a rose with sharp thorns, which gives pleasure but can draw blood. Next slide, please, sir. Or just like a coin with two sides, every sukham has a dukham on the reverse side. These bhogas give threefold pain. The first is the pain of acquisition, the second is the pain of preservation, and the third is the pain of loss. How to avoid this? One way is that we can renounce or give up the pleasures and attachments, but then we may feel the emptiness of missing these two. So having things is a problem and not having things is also a problem. The solution is discovery of fulfillment within ourselves, which is called Purnatva. Krishna does not ask us to renounce samsara, and if we decide to have these pleasures, then we must have the inner strength to face the pain and sufferings that will come with pleasures. Both Purnatvam and inner strength will come with self-knowledge. If there is no self-knowledge, possession will also be a problem. Non-possession will also be a problem. Conversely, once I am wise, possession is not a problem, and not having is also not a problem. The second value that Krishna highlights in the 23rd verse is handling of raga and dvesha, otherwise called as kama and krodha. The next slide, please, sir. Raga means attachment to certain objects, while dvesha means hatred or aversion towards certain objects. According to Vedanta, both are born out of misconceptions. Raga or attachment is born out of the notion that world will give me permanent happiness and security. Similarly, dvesha is an aversion born out of the notion that the world is capable of giving me sorrow. Both are misconceptions because no person or object in the creation can give permanent happiness, nor can it give permanent sorrow, as everything is subject to change. Truly speaking, the world is neither a source of joy nor a source of sorrow. It is me who makes the world a source of joy, and me who makes the world a source of sorrow also. Until I discover this fact, I will continue to blame this world. The real problem, therefore, is not with the world, it is with me. And the moment I recognize this, I transcend raga and dvesha, and I realize the objective world of God as being neither a source of joy nor sorrow. And until this objectivity comes, Vedanta cannot show us the transcendence from Jiva Shrishti, which is my creation, to Ishvara Shrishti, which is God's creation, to Asrishti or no creation, where no creation or Asrishti is the absolute wisdom or Brahma Jnanam. It is to be noted that Krishna does not ask us to get rid of the powerful impulse and influence of raga and dvesha, but only asks us to master them. Being human, there can be no mind where raga dvesha do not arise. It is okay not to wipe them out and let them arise, but one must master them, learn to handle them, and not become their slave. In the 24th verse, next slide, please, sir. The Krishna says that yogi whose happiness is within, whose recreation is within, and whose vision is within has become Brahman while living and attains oneness with Brahman after death. From this verse onwards, Shri Krishna is talking about Jnana Phalam. Inner fulfillment comes with emotional soundness, as we just discussed. On the other hand, in emotional weakness, there is a problem if things are there and also when they are not there. Once there is inner fulfillment, the Jnani will revel with the joy of his or her true self, Atma Swarupa. Then happiness, contentment, security, and peace, everything is within. I am full, I am complete. I do not need anything external to be happy. This is what is called Purnatvam. And such a person is a true yogi. He becomes a Brahma Bhutaha, one with Brahman. This the Jnani will enjoy as long as he is alive, reveling in his or her Purnatvam, free from attachments, free from samsara. And this is what is called Jivan Mukti. And when the Prarabdha Karma is over and the Jnani's body falls after death, this Jnani will attain Videha Mukti, that is freedom from cycle of birth and death. Krishna calls it Brahma Nirvanam Gacchati in this verse. Thus, a true jnani is free while living as a Jivan Mukta, and he is free after death also as a Videha Mukta. Verse number 25 is an important verse and states, the sages who are free from impurities, who are self-restrained, and who are interested in the welfare of all the beings and whose doubts are dispelled, attain oneness with Brahman. In this verse, Krishna talks about various stages of spiritual evolution that a sadhaka must go through in order to attain spiritual fulfillment. The next slide, please, sir. The first stage is Shina Kalmashaha, that is getting rid of the mental weaknesses, including Raga and Dvesha. So the first stage is preparation of the mind, and also Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, following a life of values and morals, that is an ethical life, being interested in the welfare of all the beings. The second stage is Yatatmanaha. Once I develop interest in spirituality, which itself is because of Punyam and Ishwara Nugraha, I have to work for my spiritual growth, because according to Vedanta, neither spiritual growth nor liberation is God's will. It depends on our own free will. Those sadhakas which acquire discipline and knowledge by their own efforts, by tapping into God's grace willingly, are called Yatatmanaha. The third stage is Rishayaha, that is obtaining Jnanam, after which the sadhaka becomes a Rishi or a Jnani. Such a Rishi may well be living and working amidst the society as a Grihastha, wearing ordinary clothes like you and me, and yet in the truest sense, such a sadhaka would be a real Rishi. The fourth stage is Chinna Dvaita. Knowledge is beneficial only when it is free from all forms of doubt. Doubtful knowledge is as good as ignorance. Also, the acquisition of knowledge is incomplete until all doubts are completely cleared and the knowledge becomes a conviction called as Nishchaya Jnanam. When doubts are removed and the sadhaka's own intellect is convinced, then he or she becomes a Chinna Dvaita, Samshaya Rahita, free from doubts. And once the doubt-free knowledge is attained, the Chinna Dvaita sadhaka becomes a Sthira Pradnyaha. The fifth and the final stage is Brahma Nirvanam Labhante, where such a Sthira Pradnya sadhaka attains oneness with Brahman. We should remember that there is no question of merging into Brahman in a physical sense of term, because Brahman, as we have studied, is all-pervading. And merging into Brahman simply means dropping the notion that I am away from Brahman. In verse 26 also, Krishna enumerates various stages of spiritual growth, quite similar to what we saw in the previous verse, but we will quickly go through it. The first stage is Kama Krodha Viyuktanam. Management of Kama and Krodha is possible when I know this basic principle of Vedanta, that my happiness depends not on what I have, but it depends on what I am. So the first step is management of Kama and Krodha, that is obtaining Vairagyam. The second stage is Yata Chetasam, developing an integrated and organized mind, because a focused mind is the instrument that is the key for successful spiritual journey. The third stage is possessing an organized and integrated personality by following Samadhi Shatasampattihi. The fourth stage is Yatinam, that is becoming a Yati or a Sannyasi for a concentrated pursuit of scriptural studies. And the fifth and the final stage is Vidhitatmanaha, by following Jnana Yoga, that is a systematic and consistent study of the Vedanta for a length of time under the guidance of a competent Acharya. A Jnani will obtain Brahma Jnanam, and such a Jnani is called Vidhitatmanaha in this verse. As a result of this knowledge, such a Yati or a Jnani will become one with Brahman, that is Brahma Nirvanam Vartate. Thank you very much. Hari Om. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Meenal, for a brilliant presentation supported by some beautiful slides. You have covered everything, both in Tatwa Bodha and Bhagavad-Gita as well. There is nothing to add to it. However, I wish to touch upon a few key words in Bhagavad-Gita verses to cement the understanding better and as a preparation to the teaching quiz. In the shloka 22, Hi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yona evate adyantavantah kaunteya na teshu ramate buddha. Here in this verse 22, samsparshaja bhoga, those which are born out of contact, sense organs with sense objects. This is the very key word. This is the root. then dukkha yonayaha, source of sorrow, and then adyantavantaha, have beginning and end. The jnanis or the rishis will ignore these dukkha yonaya adyantavanta samsparshaja bhogaha. In the next shloka 23, we have Shaknoti haiva yaha sodum prak sharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayuktaha sasukhi naraha. Shaknoti yas sodum, who is able to manage raga and dvesha or kama krodha. He compares it to the body illness which has to be managed. Then yuktaha, gnani, one who has shaknoti yas sodum, who has managed the sense organs, managed kama krodha, managed dvesha and raga. He is yuktaha, he is gnani, disciplined person, master of himself, organized person. Sa sukhi naraha, only such a happy person who is free from all these things, who has managed, will attain Brahma Nirvanam or Brahmanis. Then we have three more shlokas. Yontas sukhontaramas tathantar jyotirevacha sayogi Brahma Nirvanam Brahma Bhutodi gacchati. Here, Sukhontararama, one who revels within himself, Antar Jyotihi, he has got light within, and such a person will attain Brahma Nirvana or Brahma Bhuta. As Dr. Meenal said, Brahma Bhutaha is Jivan Mukta, Brahma Nirvana is Videha Mukta. In the next shloka, Labante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayaha Kshinakal. In fact, all the words are important here. Kshinakal Chinnadvaidha Yatatmanaha Sarvabhuta Hite Rataha. And those who have crossed all these stages will attain Brahma Nirvanam. They are called Rishayaha or sages. In the next, that is the final 26th shloka, Kama Krodha Viyuktanam Yatinam Yatachetasam Abhito Brahma Nirvanam Vartate Viditatmanam. Here again the repetition of 25 shloka only. Kama Krodha Viyuktanam Yatinam Yatachetasam Viditatmanam. When he crosses all these stages, again he attains Brahma Nirvana. These are the few very important words I just wanted to emphasize. Now, let us turn to teaching quiz on the topics Dr. Meenal has taught us today. As has been repeatedly told, the purpose of this quiz is only to strengthen our understanding of subject and not to test your knowledge. Please keep this in mind and get ready for the quiz. In shloka 22 of Bhagavad-Gita, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavantah kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. The question is, what word does Sri Krishna use to describe pleasures born out of contact with sense objects? We have just heard this just a few minutes back. It is samsparshaja bhogaha, the one who has come into contact sense organs and sense pleasures. Next question. Again, the same shloka. The question is, why does the wise person not revel in pleasures which are born out of contact? Why do they not revel in the pleasures? The answer is, pleasures which are born of contact, samsparshaja bhogaha, are sources of sorrow, dukkha yonaya, as they have beginning and end, adyantavantaha. Next question will go. Again, in the same shloka, what is the message Krishna is conveying through this verse? Is it physical preparedness or mental preparedness, emotional preparedness, or no preparations? Yes, the answer is mental preparedness. Because knowing that pleasures of the world come and go and to be prepared for it, not to be affected by both pleasure and pain. Develop inner strength and not rely on people, things, or situations. In the shloka 23, Shaknoti haivaya sodham praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayuktaha sasukhi naraha. The question is, what does Krishna highlight in this verse? What does Krishna highlight in this verse? He says how to handle raga, attachment, and dvesha, hatred. Again, it is Shaknoti haiva yas sodum Shaknoti. Next question in the same shloka. What is Krishna's advice about handling raga and dvesha? Should we wipe it out? Should we reduce gradually? Should we manage it or do nothing? As we heard earlier, it is managing it. Sodum Shaknoti. Question number 6. Krishna compares managing raga and dvesha to what? The word prak sharira vimokshanat will play a role in this. That is illness of the body. Managing illness of the body, sodum shaknoti. Question number 7. What does Krishna call for one who is able to manage this, his raga and dvesha? Is he yukta purusha? Is he gnani purusha? Is he uttama purusha or punya purusha? Naturally, you guessed it right. It is yuktaha sasukhi naraha. This is what the shloka says. He is yukta purushaha. An integrated, emotionally sound person. Question number 8. We have read both these 22 and 23 shlokas. The question is, these two shlokas convey two values. They are dash and dash preparedness. The answer is mental and psychological preparedness. Question number 9 about the shloka 24. Yontas sukhontararamaha tathantar jyoti revacha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto adhigacchati. According to Krishna, who is fit to be called a yogi? One whose happiness is within, yantas sukha. One who revels in true nature, antararamaha. One whose vision is within, antarjyoti, all of the above. Naturally, the answer is the fourth one, that is all of the above. Let's go to question number 10. In the shloka 24, what is the gnana phalam for such a yogi? That is what Krishna is telling. As we studied earlier, sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto adhigacchati. Brahma nirvanam and brahma bhuta. Here the answer is Brahma Nirvanam. He attains oneness with Brahman. We can also add Brahma Bhuta, also add to this Brahma Nirvanam and Brahma Bhuta. Next question about 25 shloka. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayaha Kshina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidha Yatatmanaha Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Which of the following qualities of sages, according to Krishna, are required to attain oneness with Brahman? Brahma Nirvana. Is it free from impurities? Kshena Kalmashaha. Is it self-restrained? Yatatmanaha. Is it interested in the welfare of all things? Ratha Sarva Bhuta Hitaha. Whose all doubts are dispelled? Chinnadvaida. And the guess is always all of the above. Answer is all the above. Next question. Attaining oneness with Brahman does not mean dash merger, but means dropping the notion and misconception that I am dash from Brahman and understanding that the dash between me and Brahman. This awareness is termed by Adi Shankara as dash. This is cognitive event. Dr. Meenal specifically mentioned the same sentence when she was explaining. It is not the physical merger, but means dropping the notion that I am away from Brahman and understanding that there is no distance between me and Brahman. This awareness, as Adi Shankara puts it, is Aham Brahmasmi. Next question is, Kama Krodha Viyuktanam Yatinam Yatachetasam Abhito Brahma Nirvanam Vartate Vididatmanam. What is the Gnana Palam for a Gnani? As I have highlighted in the red color, Abhito Brahma Nirvanam. Brahma Nirvanam is the answer. Oneness with Brahman before death, Jivan Mukti, and oneness after death, that is Videha Mukti. Question number 14. This is about the Tatwa Bodha. What are the two fundamental laws of Vedanta, which Dr. Meenal explained in depth? It is fundamental law. One is, I, the experiencer, am different from whatever I experience. Fundamental law 2 is, I, the experiencer, am free from the attributes of the experience objects. That brings us to the close of this teaching quiz. Thank you all. Thank you.
The second Khanda of Mundaka contains the central teaching to not only Mundaka Upanishad, but all Upanishads. The beginning verses are Mahavakyas. Join us for the 112th session, where our teachers shall explain teachings from the Mundaka Upanishad, second Mundaka, chapter 2, verses 6 to 10. Do not miss this opportunity. Remember to join us on Friday, 12th August at 6:45 p.m. Friends, on behalf of Param Vedanta, I would like to express a hearty thanks to all the participants for joining us today in today's session. To Dr. Sandhya Ravi for chanting and explaining the divine shloka. To Sri Venkatesh Prasad for giving us the introduction as well as for highlighting the important aspects of today's presentation. To Dr. Meenal for your excellent presentation supported by illustrative slides. To Sri Venkatesh Prasad and Srimati Chetana Hegde for a wonderful and educative teaching quiz, which you have so painstakingly put together. That brings us to an end of another wonderful session. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.